The low hum of machinery echoed faintly through the gritty industrial district of Riverton, a neighborhood struggling under the weight of its fading legacy. Once a symbol of progress, now its air was thick with diesel fumes, the metallic tang of nearby factories, and the mouth-watering aroma of street food. Heavy clouds loomed overhead, casting a somber gray hue over the crowded streets. Makeshift vendor stalls cluttered the sidewalks, offering everything from counterfeit electronics to second-hand clothing, each transaction accompanied by sharp haggling and quick glances over the shoulder. Among the bustling chaos, no one noticed the sharp eyes of a lone woman meticulously scanning her surroundings. Sophia Grant blended seamlessly into the scene. Her gray hoodie zipped over a plain white t-shirt, faded jeans, and scuffed sneakers that spoke of countless missions. A leather crossbody bag rested casually against her hip, its worn appearance masking the significance of its contents. Sophia wasn't here to shop. This was no leisure outing. For over a decade, she had served as one of the CIA's most skilled operatives, navigating treacherous waters both abroad and at home. Today, however, the stakes felt personal. The message had been cryptic, but clear enough. Dockside Market. Third row. 2 p.m. Watch for the red scarf. That single line had pulled Sophia into action. The arms trade in Riverton had spiraled out of control, escalating from whispered rumors to a full-blown operation that threatened national security. The CIA preferred a cautious, methodical approach, but Sophia didn't have the luxury of time. She had learned to trust her instincts, and they told her this was an opportunity she couldn't afford to miss. As she loitered near a vendor's stall piled high with woolen blankets, Sophia feigned interest in a fraying throw. Her peripheral vision, sharp as ever, caught sight of a man lingering near an alley. Thin, wiry, and jittery, his weathered face was partially obscured by a tattered red scarf. His darting eyes screamed of nerves, and Sophia's hand brushed against the strap of her bag, where a concealed recording device and encrypted drive lay hidden. Patience, she reminded herself. Patience was her greatest ally in moments like these. She shifted subtly, positioning herself for a better vantage point. Using the reflection in a shop window, she kept a watchful eye on her target without drawing attention. Everything was going according to plan until an unexpected disturbance disrupted the fragile balance. 2 uniformed police officers entered the market from the far side, their presence impossible to ignore. The taller of the two was broad-shouldered, with a buzz cut and a permanent scowl etched onto his face. His partner, younger and leaner, exuded an unease that suggested inexperience. These weren't officers on a routine patrol. Their sharp, deliberate movements made it clear. They were hunting for something, or someone. Sophia's instincts prickled as the taller officer, his badge reading Bradley, locked eyes with her in the shop window's reflection. His predatory stare lingered a moment too long, and Sophia recognized the look immediately. It wasn't suspicion rooted in evidence. It was prejudice cloaked in authority. Bradley nudged his partner, and the two began making their way toward her. Sophia's target, the man with the red scarf, noticed the disturbance and shifted nervously, inching closer to the alley's shadows. Not now, Sophia thought, her frustration carefully masked. Any disruption could spook her informant, and the mission would be compromised. Bradley's boots hit the pavement with deliberate force as he approached. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his tone dripping with false politeness. "Mind telling me what you're doing here?" Sophia turned slowly, her expression a practiced mask of mild confusion. "Shopping," she replied evenly. "Is that a problem?" Bradley's smirk widened, his hand resting a little too comfortably near his holster. "Funny, you don't look like you're from around here. This isn't exactly your kind of neighborhood, is it?" Sophia's fingers tightened imperceptibly on the blanket she was holding, but her expression remained neutral. "I wasn't aware Riverton required residency permits," she said dryly. The smirk faltered for a brief moment, replaced by a glimmer of irritation. "Just seems odd, is all," Bradley said, his tone sharpening. "Why don't you go ahead and open that bag for us?" Sophia met his gaze steadily, weighing her options. She knew men like Bradley thrived on intimidation, using their authority as a weapon. Compliance would only feed his ego, but resistance could escalate the situation dangerously. Why? She asked, her tone measured. Do you have probable cause? Bradley's partner, whose badge read Carson, shifted uneasily behind him. We've had reports of suspicious activity, Carson said, his voice lacking conviction. Suspicious activity? Sophia repeated, raising an eyebrow. And what exactly looks suspicious about me? Bradley's smirk returned, sharper this time. You tell me, he said. Bag. Now. Sophia's patience wore thin. With deliberate calm, she unclasped her bag and held it open just enough for Bradley to peer inside. His expression soured as he found nothing but her wallet, phone, and a few crumpled receipts. Without warning, he snatched the bag from her shoulder, dumping its contents onto the vendor's table. This what you call cooperating, he sneered, holding up the now empty bag like a trophy. Sophia's jaw tightened, but she forced herself to remain calm. You're out of line, she said firmly. Bradley's face darkened, his eyes narrowing. Excuse me? You're harassing me without cause, Sophia said, her voice cutting through the tension. And you know it. The crowd around them had grown, murmurs rippling as onlookers began recording the confrontation on their phones. Bradley, clearly agitated by the attention, grabbed her arm roughly. That's it, he growled. Hands behind your back. Before he could twist her arm, Sophia moved. Years of training kicked in as she spun out of his grip, her elbow connecting sharply with his jaw in a controlled strike. Bradley stumbled back, clutching his face as the crowd gasped. Are we done here? Sophia asked coldly, her stance relaxed but undeniably prepared for whatever came next. Bradley recovered quickly, his expression twisted with rage. You think you can assault a cop and walk away? He snarled, reaching for his radio. Backup needed. Market Square, East Side. Suspect resisting arrest. Sophia's heart sank as the wail of sirens pierced the air. Her informant had vanished, and chaos was inevitable. The sharp wail of sirens echoed through the narrow alleys of Riverton, piercing the market's bustling chaos. Patrol cars screeched to a halt at the market's edge, and uniformed officers spilled out, their hands hovering near holstered weapons. A tense crowd gathered, murmuring uneasily as the spectacle unfolded. Sophia stood motionless, her gaze steady as the officers closed in. Her instincts urged her to resist, to make a run for it, but her calculated mind knew better. Resistance would only escalate the situation, and there were too many unknowns at play. Bradley, the towering officer with the bruised jaw, smirked triumphantly as he stepped forward. You're done, he spat, his voice laced with venom. Sophia didn't resist as two officers grabbed her arms and roughly secured her wrists with cold metal cuffs. The crowd erupted into protests, their phones capturing every angle of the scene. Among them, Sophia spotted Carson, the younger officer, standing frozen at the edge of the commotion. His face was pale, his eyes darting between Sophia and Bradley, guilt and hesitation written all over him. You know this isn't right, Sophia said quietly as she passed Carson, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. He didn't reply, his gaze dropping to the ground as the officers led her to a waiting patrol car. Sophia slid into the back seat, her mind racing. The mission had been compromised, her informant long gone, and now she found herself at the mercy of a corrupt system. But Sophia Grant was no stranger to adversity. At the station, she was ushered into a dimly lit holding cell, the steel bars cold and uninviting. Hours passed, each tick of the clock amplifying her frustration. She replayed the events in her mind, searching for a way to turn the situation to her advantage. Finally, the cell door creaked open, and Bradley strode in, flanked by Carson and a senior officer. Bradley's smug grin stretched across his bruised face. You've made a big mistake, he taunted, crossing his arms. Let's see how tough you are when this goes on your record. Sophia stood slowly, her expression calm and unyielding. She met Bradley's gaze with unflinching intensity, her every movement deliberate. No, she said, her voice steady and cutting. You've made the mistake. Before anyone could react, she reached into the waistband of her jeans and pulled out a sleek, black wallet. She flipped it open, revealing her CIA credentials. The room fell silent. The senior officer's mouth opened slightly in shock, while Carson froze mid-step, his face a mix of guilt and realization. Bradley's grin evaporated, replaced by a pale, stunned expression. "Agent Sophia Grant," she announced, her tone cold and commanding, "and you're about to face the consequences of your abuse of power." The door opened again, and two men in sharp suits entered the room, their federal badges gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Their expressions were stone-cold as one of them turned to Bradley. "Officer Bradley," the man said sharply, "you're under arrest for assaulting a federal agent, falsifying reports, and obstructing an ongoing investigation." "What?" Bradley sputtered, his voice rising in panic. "You can't be serious. I didn't." "Save it," the agent interrupted. "Anything you say can and will be used against you." Bradley's protests fell on deaf ears as the agents secured him in handcuffs and led him out of the room. The senior officer muttered an apology to Sophia before scurrying away, leaving Carson standing alone in the corner. Sophia turned to him, her sharp gaze softening slightly. "You can still do the right thing," she said, her voice low but firm. Carson hesitated, his shoulders sagging under the weight of his indecision. Finally, he nodded, his expression one of quiet resolve. In the weeks that followed, the ripple effects of Sophia's confrontation spread far beyond Riverton. An internal investigation into Bradley's misconduct uncovered a web of corruption within the department, one that had been festering for years. Complaints long buried were brought to light, and officers once silenced began to speak out. Bradley's downfall became a catalyst for systemic change, forcing the department to confront its own failures. As for Sophia, her mission in Riverton had taken an unexpected turn, but it was far from over. The arms trade operation she had hoped to disrupt was still in motion, and her informant's disappearance left more questions than answers. Yet, she had no regrets about her actions. Sometimes, the battles you didn't plan for were the most important ones to fight. Standing on the outskirts of Riverton, Sophia took one last look at the neighborhood before stepping into an unmarked vehicle. The weight of the events settled on her shoulders, but she carried it with the same resolve that had guided her through countless missions. She hadn't set out to be a symbol of resistance or a catalyst for change, but fate had a way of choosing its champions. Sophia Grant was prepared for whatever came next.